It's cut day in the NFL and in Jacksonville. We're going live and we're going to talk about it. A little bittersweet today, but we'll go through the names and tell you any surprises that we see. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are looking live. I always wanted to say that. No, but thank you and welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. In case you didn't know, if you're on YouTube right now, guess what? All you got to do is hit the bell for notifications whenever we drop an episode. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page also, because we're free to subscribe to here. And wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you tap in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode there as well. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I want to give a special shout out to the everydayers that join the show every single day. That's why we call you an everydayer, because you're here every day. And if you want to be called an everydayer, you can watch every day too, and I'll make sure that you're included. Drop a comment downstairs in the comment box or hit me up on social media, Shop Talking Wig, and I'll make sure to try to respond to you. All right, so here's the deal. We're going live today, right? Pressure. Cut down day came and went. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the fact that the cuts are to 53 have been made. They are official by the Jaguars. I'll run through the list. Also, I make sure I use the word initial, because it doesn't mean that it's going to stay the same way. Now, I will tell you this. The chances of them making wholesale changes decrease as the team gets better and better, because they seem to have a tendency, the better the team, they know who they have, and a lot of the guys that they cut are going to be picked up everywhere. But I would suspect that there may be two or three people. I'll explain the process a little bit too in segment 2, and why, and we'll talk about the presumptive, and I say the presumptive hard choices that were made, because as I go through the list, there'll be 4 or 5 names that I was like, dang, I didn't think they were going to get cut. But it's not over. They can always be brought back to the practice squad, but a lot of those guys may end up being picked up elsewhere. And then I'll look at in segment 3 what is still needed before week 1, and that's why I said the initial list, because there still may be 1 or 2 big names or players added at certain positions as more cuts become official. All right, let's get to it, and we'll get right to it for you. Thank all of you guys for who's taking your time out also to join me for this live podcast. We're running about 26, 27 minutes, and then I'll let you get back to whatever it was you were doing, even if it's shopping for water and perishable items, because we're supposed to, I think, what is it, Idalia? Is that her name? Is that the name of the storm? She sounds old, doesn't she? That's like an old person's name. But anyway, we just hope that she doesn't do a lot of new damage to the state of Florida. But we'll all get together, embrace, and prepare. It's my first one in my new home. So, yeah. All right, let's get to it. When I get to one, I may throw the bat signal up. This is my T-Wig bat signal as one that shocked me. All right, let's start at the very top. I'm going in the order. Now, these are the guys who were waived. Long snapper Tucker Addington. Wide receiver Kevin Austin Jr. Safety Latavius Brini. Outside linebacker DJ Coleman. Running back Snoop Connor. Offensive lineman Coy Cronk. Defensive lineman Deshaun Dixon. Cornerback Eric Hallett. Wide receiver Jacob Harris. Cornerback Caleb Hayes. Linebacker Dequan Jackson. Offensive lineman Samuel Jackson. Not that Samuel Jackson. I wonder if he cursed him out as he was leaving. You mother. No, I'm just joking. Wide receiver Oliver Martin. Kicker James McCourt. Safety, I want to make sure I say this name right, because I have been known to butcher names, man. Safety Ayo Ayilola. Okay. Oyalola. tight end Derek Parrish, tight end Josh Peterson, coach's son, tight end Garrett Prince. There you go. Wide receiver Kendrick Pryor, Nathan Rourke, quarterback Nathan Rourke, thought he would stick around. Outside linebacker Jordan Smith, I wanted him to stay. Had to come back from a tough injury last year, and that's always a rough one. Outside linebacker Willie Taylor, the third. Defensive lineman Raymond Vohasek. Offensive lineman Darrell Williams. Wide receiver Seth Williams. Cornerback Divide Wilson. So I've done the bat signal like 4 times. If you have not, if you're not watching it, and you're just listening to it, there are 4 guys right there. Waived, injured, Jeray Jenkins, a wide receiver, released, and these guys are not subject to waivers. Chandler Brewer, who's an offensive lineman, Tavon Campbell, cornerback, defensive lineman Michael Dogby, there's a guy that they signed in free agency, offensive lineman Bobby Evans, and the running back Kadre Ollison. Placed on reserve, injured, Ventrell Miller. That's expected after his Achilles, and Josh Wells, offensive lineman. And placed on the exempt list for the commissioner is Chris Claybrooks, the defensive back. Now, we talked about that as I broke a story a few weeks ago, a bad story, about an arrest. He was arrested with some allegations. The allegations are awful, but everyone needs their day in court, so I guess that's what. He can't practice with the team. He can't play. Therefore, he's on the commissioner's exempt list. So not somewhere you really, really want to be. So those are the cuts. A couple of surprises in there. The fact that they did not keep a third quarterback. And hopefully, I think he's a practice squad addition. Divide Wilson was getting rave reviews a couple of weeks ago, but this is what happens. Once the games start being played, that's when you really, really separate it. Was it a situation where he was not able to transfer what he was doing on the practice field to a game? Or was it just that the other guys stepped up and then those veterans would take this grown man with mortgages, man, that got kids in pre-K, they are not going to give these jobs up easily. So that's the case. So before we get into the other hard choices that had to be made in segment 2, I'll give you a little bit of insight, and I called someone to make sure that I was going to be correct on this. And the way this works, I always talked about when the Jaguars were looking for a GM before, and people kept bringing up guys who their primary experience and most of their experience, and sometimes their only experience, was being the director of pro personnel. Folks confuse that with the director of player personnel, right? Director of player personnel is usually like an assistant GM, and he sort of sits in a responsibility area where he's responsible for the pro side and the college side. Director of college scouting is the head of a college scouting. Director of pro personnel is the head of pro scouting. That department is smaller than the college side. That's why most of the guys that get jobs at a higher level end up coming from the college side, from director of college scouting, because they supervise more people. It does not mean that's the only way. I know Scott Pioli came from the pro side, as well as the current general manager for the New Orleans Saints. The Atlanta Falcons, when he was in New Orleans, he came from the pro side. So Terry Fontenot. So it had to, but once he came from the pro side, he was able to sit in that seat, and he got the rare, I wouldn't call it rare, but the less likely promotion to be the director of player personnel, which kind of oversees both, and it gives him the experience that he needs to be a GM. Now, these days are the Super Bowl, if you will, for the pro guys, because they got to know all of the guys that are getting cut, and they got to make recommendations. And they've been watching players from the other team. They know every single player on every list. And when they go in and find out, and this is going to tie into segment 3, hey, Trent, what do we need? Because then boom, 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 this is what we have, and here's the tape to back it up. And Trent probably knows them too, because he had a book on them coming out of college. But if it's guys that have had a couple of years in the league or a good preseason, those are the people that you'll take a look at. All right, so here's what we're going to do here today. I'm going to make sure that we get into the presumptive guys that we thought um, were going to make it that didn't. We'll talk about them, and then we'll take a hard look to see what exactly do the Jaguars need, and then you can go and look at all the lists, and you can determine for yourself if folks are worth going out to get. We'll do all that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about the Gametime app, man. Listen, if you buy tickets to anything, I don't care if it's a pro game, a college game, theater. If you're going to New York, you're going to buy tickets for theater, movies, whatever, concerts, Beyonce's, all. I don't know if you're going to find those, but Taylor Swift, whatever. You need to use the Gametime app to get it done because it should not be stressful for you. You're trying to go have a good time. Therefore, you need to make sure that all your mind is clear and all the work is done by somebody else and not you. Flash deals, last minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views, the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss, all of those things on the Gametime app. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. All right, here's what you need to do. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, man, we're running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. Cut day. Very bittersweet day. If you know people that have played, and if you know people that worked their entire life and worked their butt off to get to this point, and I had a guy tell me, man, I ain't never been a backup. I've never been a backup on any team I've been on since a little kid. And the guy got cut. So this is hard. It's bittersweet. It's fans don't really see it from that perspective, but guys that you may have grown up with, if you're in your 20s, that have always been the best at everything that they do. And I always say this because I want people to know that how hard it is to make it in this league. Guys that you look at as big, tough guys like Goldberg and Suge Knight, even though he's in prison right now, Suge Knight and guys like The Rock and Brock Lesnar couldn't cut it. Could not cut it. And maybe that'll help sometimes when you look at NFL players and say that somebody stinks or somebody sucks. Or you have to really understand how good you have to be. If you go down there, you'll see a lot of guys leaving with bags and they don't look like they need to get cut from anything. They look like they can make it. The thing with the Jaguars are you're going to see more and more people because there's going to be less and less spots open, right? There's going to be less and less spots open on a team that is going to build through the draft and develop through the draft. The likelihood that guys are going to make it the following year. The only way those dudes make it, man, is if teams have to make a decision on contracts or if guys get hurt or suddenly retire. You better hope that it gets very, very difficult. I remember when Trent Baalke was in with the 49ers, and that's the year they drafted Marcus Lattimore. They had a bunch of picks. They were cutting guys they picked in the 4th round because that's what has to happen once you start elevating. Once you start elevating in this league and you start getting good and there's less and less spots open. Now, I'll tell you this, the Chiefs, they were already a really good team, and the Chiefs, all of their rookies made the team last year. I would say all of them, but damn near all of them, and like 6 of them, and guys that were chosen in day 3 ended up playing significant minutes for a team that won the championship. I ain't going to say minutes, but snaps for a team that won the title. A few years back, they got 3 offensive linemen in the draft, and 2 of them were starting. Day 2 picks. Well, one's a day 2 pick, one's a day 3 pick. So there is room once you reach the higher level for these guys to actually make the team when they're picked. But those teams are going to be it's going to be very, very difficult for undrafted free agents. It's going to be difficult for later round guys to make those and that's a good thing. The Jags had a lot of picks this year in a draft that most people didn't think was a great draft. I assume the hard choices came at the positions where the Jaguars either have guys that are being suspended or guys that are banged up, and those injuries and being hurt right now, it's not long term. They have to think about the big picture. Cam Robinson's coming back in week 5, right? So now they got to look at that situation, and then they got to see what's going on with Cooper Hodges. And this is where all that backdoor communication really comes into effect. That's why I woke up this morning and I sent a message. I said, I am not going to play GM today. I'm not going to play GM today because I know what I saw, but I haven't watched the tape from practice, the eye in the sky. You don't have the privilege of having an assistant coach that's telling you everything that he's telling the coach. You don't have the medicals. You don't know what the long-term prognosis is. And then, for instance, I'm not surprised they kept Parker Washington. I think his play warranted, but even if all things were even, so you had another guy, if you're sitting here making a hard decision about Parker Washington and some cat that has been in the league for 3 years, then that means you may have seen the best of the third-year guy, but now you got a rookie. You just got here and you're already running neck and neck with this dude, and we drafted you with an asset. Why not keep him? To see if his development in 2 or 3 years, when he gets to the same point as that player, is it worth it? Because the bottom line is a guy like Parker Washington, he's under contract for this year and 2 more after that, right? As a late round pick. 3rd year. You get 3 years before you got to do anything. With a dude that maybe has developed and has gotten better and has done everything he was supposed to do, but he's 25 and his contract runs out after this year. If he does help you, is he really, if you get down to your 5th or 6th receiver right now, you're in trouble. So if he does help you, but he's due for a deal next year, and you already got a bunch of guys under contract, and he ain't that much better than Parker Washington, then why not have Parker Washington on the team? And maybe by the time he's up for a deal, you need a 3rd receiver, and you already know you have one in-house. So some of those decisions are made like that. They have earned they have enough cachet, and they've earned enough for me to not be second-guessed on a day like today. You know, we all do this for a living, and we think we know what they're going to get, and we think we know what they're going to do, but truth is we really don't. So you say, well, wait, why don't they just cut down earlier so they can just start taking the guys that they can? Do they have to do what the league says and the mandatory cut down day? Can they cut down earlier than that? Well, you don't want to lose all of the bodies in camp. You need the work. You also need the bodies to play in those preseason games late. The other thing is what if Ventrell Miller was on track to make this team and you cut Shaq Quarterman and Ventrell has the Achilles and now you don't have Shaq Quarterman? That's why you don't do it early as well. There may be some guys that really, really did make this ball club based on injury. Jeremiah Ledbetter wasn't one. And I keep hearing people say, well, it's because they're banged up. No, if you watch the tape, Jeremiah Ledbetter was going to be on this team regardless of injury. Regardless of injury. I was real shocked that Garrett Prince didn't make it. I was real shocked because he's looked as good as any tight end down there. I'm almost ready to say, and this is a good problem to have, I'm almost saying they overshot the runway on the tight end position. Now, I know I've been real critical of them not having good tight ends forever, right? So if you overshoot it, fine, you overshoot it. But Luke Farrell has developed. I don't know if people realize this. When they go to their 2 tight end sets, he's a starter. It's Luke Farrell and Evan Ingram. And they use the 2nd-round pick on Brenton Strange, and then they cut a really good player in Garrett Prince. It almost makes you think, man, they might have overshot. They might have got overkill. They might have gave us too many tight ends and used the pick that they didn't have to use, but nevertheless, they did. And I think this is a problem that is wonderful, wonderful to have, in my opinion, because Prince is a 4th-round pick. He's going to be, not Prince, but the kid out of Penn State, Strange, is going to be here. Not 1, not 2. I sound like a Miami Heat fan. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but for 4 years. They're going to get all that time out of him, and I think he's going to play. So they'll have a 3 tight end rotation, and we'll see how that works down the stretch. We'll take another look at the cuts real quick, and then we'll talk about what is needed. But first, I have to remind you to watch Locked On NFL. Tune into it for free on the YouTube page. You can subscribe for free on the YouTube page. And then wherever you get your podcast, make sure you check in every single day. The Wednesday version includes yours truly. I'll be there with my co-host, James Rapine, every Wednesday. But you can listen to it every single day. They have great hosts. Luke Braun, Ross Jackson, your boy Q, Chris Carter, Kevin Ostracker, all of these guys. And if I miss somebody, don't get mad at me now because I just dropped it. But make sure you check out Locked On NFL and make that your next listen and your next watch. And we'll close the show out and talk more about what the Jaguars did and what is left for them to still do. And we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, thanks for joining again. The Locked On Jaguars podcast is a live edition here. I ain't scared. Folks think I'm scared to go live. I've been going live all my life. I ain't scared. I just hope nothing happens to make me have to shut this thing off real quick. But no, I'm glad you guys joined us today on Cut Day. I decided to go live because the energy, it felt a little bit different, and I wanted to just give you my raw thoughts and my opinion straight from the hip without a whole bunch of rehearsing. I've kind of planned on how I wanted to do this show the entire time. Lots of really good football players, I believe. If I had to do an over-under on it, and I know FanDuel doesn't have an over-under on this because it's just too quick. I was not surprised by Snoop Conner. The other running backs have just outplayed him. I'm going to go through about maybe 10 of these names and guys that I think could come back to the practice squad realistically if they make it. I don't think Garrett Prince makes it back. Has a chance to come back because I think somebody's going to pick him up. I don't think Jordan Smith, people are going to be intrigued with his size. I don't think Jordan Smith is going to be available. Darrell Williams, I don't think he's going to be available. Devon Wilson, I don't think will be available. Eric Hallett, I damn sure don't think is going to be available. Deshaun Dixon may get picked up by someone too, and probably DJ Coleman and Latavius Brinkley. Those are the guys that I think really. I don't think their entire practice squad is going to come from players that they cut, although I do think there are some guys, James McCourt, the kicker, Nathan Rourke, the quarterback, guys who have been here before, and maybe even Kevin Austin Jr. He'll probably have a chance to come back. I know Kevin Austin, they had high hopes for him. He was bothered a little bit early in camp with some sort of leg injury. But I think when you look at those guys, I think those are the guys that will most likely have a chance. Probably, maybe even Oliver Martin, guys like that will have a chance. Jacob Harris has a shot if no one picks him up. But those are guys that have a real chance of coming back. I'm not sure about Snoop. He didn't really separate himself or do enough. Josh Peterson certainly has a chance to come back and be on the practice squad because I think besides the fact that he's Doug Peterson's son, I think he came in and he had the right attitude and he worked really hard and he wants to earn everything. And I think that's a good look. So maybe he's another addition that will be allowed to come back also. What do they still need? Well, everybody's going to say edge rusher. Right now, Caleb Vaughn's your 3. Nasir Abdullah is your 4. After the first 2, you have to also remember that Dewan Smoot is coming back. I don't know what his weight is. I know he had gained weight at one point, and then he lost weight. He lost some weight, then he gained some weight last year because they were using him more inside. I think what they project from his health and what they project from his production, and you know who he is and what he is. And once he was able to clear medically, I really believe that they were like, bring him back because that's some professionalism. The dude is always ready to go. He's versatile. He does a lot of things. He may be your quote unquote 5th edge rusher if they don't find somebody that they really like out there. So that he may be the guy who kind of doubles between both of those positions and both of those stops. They kept. I was in the thinking that they were going to keep more defensive linemen than they let go. It kind of turns out it's probably one more than some people thought, and maybe one less than I thought. But once again, the versatility, and then the fact that this is the initial 53, it may not be. It may be 4 or 5 guys off from who they actually go into the season with. But as it stands right now, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have a really good roster. I think they have a really good team. I don't think that while I think they're top heavy, I don't think they're top heavy and are shallow. I think the depth carries. I think folks understand their roles. I think they have enough people to really have the special teams excel. And because I know that's a huge part of it, they don't necessarily have any weaknesses, in my opinion, other than the fact that early on they won't be at full strength because they'll have some guys that are missing from the team because of injury or suspension. So they won't have that full collection of guys until probably week 4 or 5, or well, at least week 5 when Cam Robinson comes back. What you have to hope for is that the I word, okay, I'll say it, injury, that bug doesn't jump up and bite this team early in the year, and they have to now really tap into their depth. Because it's not that the guys that have come in can't play. What it is if you use those guys, now you may have to go get guys that aren't ready. And you don't want to have to keep going into your depth. Some people can go into the depth and they'll be fine, but when you have to go into the depth of the depth, then that's when you really start falling back and have a little bit of a problem. But they still got Trevor Lawrence. They still got Calvin Ridley. They still got ETN, Andre Cisco, and all of those other DBs that made the team. The veteran leadership, the guys who understand the workflow. Most of the players were here last year, and then they got a nice sprinkling in of dudes that they actually went out and got in the draft. We got to talk about Antonio Johnson. A little bit banged up, but he's on this team. He is on this team. You don't see him on any injured list or any wave list, do you? Nope, you don't. So quickly, I'll go back through one more time this list, and I'll go real quick. Long snapper Tucker Addington, wide receiver Kevin Austin, safety Latavius Brini, outside linebacker DJ Coleman, Snoop Connor at running back, offensive lineman Coy Cronk, defensive lineman Deshaun Dixon, cornerbacks Eric Hallett as well as Devi Wilson, wide receiver Jacob Harris, wide receiver Oliver Martin, wide receiver Kendrick Pryor, Caleb Hayes at corner, Daquan Jackson, Samuel Jackson, not that Samuel Jackson, Darrell Williams at the offensive line, Raymond Vohasek. I think Vohasek may come back too. He's a big kid. He may come back on the practice squad, I think. Outside linebackers Willie Taylor and Jordan Smith, Josh Peterson, Derek Parrish, and Garrett Prince, all tight ends, and safety Ayo Oyelola, along with kicker James McCourt. So there you go. Those are the guys waived, injured, were wide receiver Jeray Jenkins released and are not subject to waivers, are Chandler Brewer, Tavon Campbell, Michael Dogby, Bobby Evans, and Quadre Ollison. And Ventrell Miller and Josh Wells are on injured reserve. Now, I know Ventrell's out for the season. I don't know if Josh may be a guy that they call back. And then Chris Claybrooks is on the commissioner's exempt list. He doesn't get paid. He doesn't practice. And he also does not play until his legal issues get resolved and the commissioner is satisfied. All right, I hope you've been satisfied with today's show. Make sure you tap back in every single day on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you subscribe and hit the like button on both YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from an audio perspective. And remember, this is the initial 53. It does not mean that it's over, but you guys make sure we'll keep you covered. If the Jaguars make any more moves and additions, take care of each other, as I always say, and we'll see you next time on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars,